Okay, let's say you have a Kubernetes cluster and now what do? You want to expose some services so you can access them. Not all services in your cluster are the same. Some are going to need a load balancer and are publicly accessible. Some are only internal services for the cluster itself. And then there's this other mix of things you might need for management or to maintain the cluster or observe what's going on. Some monitoring, something like that you probably want to host in cluster. You don't have to. You can, of course, get a service, ship it off somewhere else. But in a lot of cases, it's just easy if you could access those services in the cluster. Typically, what we do is you deploy something like the Kubernetes dashboard or Grafana or something, and then you just port forward. You kube control port forward, and that's good enough. Or those services might have some authentication on them that you don't really control, but you just kind of stick it in Vault somewhere and you say, this is fine. Now with Omni, we provide you a built-in workload proxy that lets you do something like these cluster services in a way that is secure. So you can require user authentication for people that have access to the cluster, and it will tunnel to your cluster anywhere it is. So let's check it out real quick. I have a cluster here. I just set it up a couple minutes ago, and the only thing I need to do to enable this is check this box right here. And this is the workload service proxy. You can do it while you create the cluster, or you can do it after the fact. It doesn't matter. We're just going to check a box. And you'll see here, it gives you a little bit of examples on how you're going to enable this or how you're going to enable a service to use this proxy as a forward. The only thing that is required is a port. You could just say, here's the port on my nodes that is going to be exposed, and this automatically will get tunneled up to Omni. And we'll show you how that works. So let's have a look at what's running in the cluster right now. And this is, again, just a default install with nothing else configured. And let's enable that service workload proxy. I go ahead and check the box, and immediately I will get a new daemon set that is the OmniCube service exposer. And this is going to do that port forwarding for me for these services. This runs as a daemon set just for high availability, but this does run in the Kubernetes cluster just so it has access to those services that you create inside of Kubernetes. Workloads are the only thing part of that CNI that is able to access the internal Kubernetes networking. So this runs and it's going to listen for services that come in and have the matching annotation to be exposed through Omni. But really, this is just a config patch to the Talos nodes that say, hey, you should be running this as a daemon set, and now that's going to be deployed just like any other Kubernetes workload. Now I'm going to show you real quick how to get started doing this with Grafana because it's a really easy way to do it, and it's something that's pretty common in this use case. So going right over the Omni docs, we can see that we are going to expose a service. Again, this just shows us what labels we need. And this has some examples if you want to do like an Nginx service, that's fine. We also have an example workload that'll do the same thing. I'm going to jump all the way down here to examples and we'll go to Grafana. And this is going to be with a Helm chart instead of with a standard YAML manifest. So I can copy this annotation and then start the Helm install. Let's create a real quick values.yaml and paste in those values. This last thing is the SVG in base64 encoding, just so that we get a little icon that's pretty. But that's all part of the copy and paste here. And then let's copy these two commands and we'll just run those. This is pulling in the Grafana chart and then it's going to use those values for overrides for the service itself. So let's jump back into Omni. Actually, let's see if it's running. There we go. It's running, but not quite ready. We'll probably get it here in a second. And then I'm going to go ahead and get this secret for my admin password. And then let's go back into Omni. And we'll see down here we have this exposed services. And this is something that is part of anything that gets that label is going to show up here. The base64 encoded SVG gives me the icon, so I can click on Grafana, and that is going to do HTTPS termination at Omni and then pass me right through. I don't have any ingress controller, service load balancer, anything else in the cluster. All I'm doing is the service proxying, which is just a TCP connection that goes straight from my Omni endpoint down into the cluster. And I should be able to log in with those default credentials provided from the service. And there we go. I have a Grafana dashboard exposed that is still gated from Omni. So if I look in my Omni, I also can do things like manage users. And the user management is going to be the exact same thing for handling anything that goes into Omni. So I can add a user here, and let's say I want to add my personal email. And as long as I have the role of reader or better, I will have access to those services. So I can create this user. And now if I go back into that URL that I got for the exposed service, I go into an incognito window. Now I can log in. And in this case, I still get the Grafana login page because it's like double authenticated. You could disable this because the exposed service is actually listening only on the Sidera link connection. So if I look at the nodes that are literally sitting right behind me and I try to access the port that this is showing up on, I don't have access to that. That's a fairly new feature in Kubernetes where it can bind the service port only to specific interfaces. And in this case, we bound it only to the Sidera link VPN connection that goes back to Omni. So I can't access this service directly from the machine. It's not a typical node port. This is a special tunnel that I get through Omni that gets gated by the authentication. And that's it. It's a really simple feature that just gives you a little bit of benefit if you don't want something that's exposed as a node port and doing port forward, or you don't need something that is full-blown load balancers or ingress controllers. This is kind of a middle ground of giving you some secure access. If people have access user accounts in Omni, if they should have access to the cluster, you can create their user accounts there, and then it gets gated with the same authentication that everything else does into Omni. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.